Everyone knew I was the one Arthur Sinclair had personally chosen for the marriage alliance. Whoever married me would inherit the Sinclair family fortune. At the engagement party, I was in a custom-tailored suit, ready to go on stage and announce the union between the Sinclair and Donovan families. But my fiancée, Vivian Sinclair, was holding hands with my adopted brother, Caleb Donovan, their fingers intertwined. She pulled him to the center of the crowd to stand beside her. "Caleb and I are in love. He is the only one I will marry," she declared. "Sincere Sterling is too impulsive. He isn't fit to be a son-in-law to the Sinclairs." The man engaged to Vivian Sinclair was now my adopted brother. Everyone looked at me with either pity or scorn. But what she didn't know was that the only reason Arthur Sinclair wanted me to marry her was because my mother is the heiress to the reclusive and powerful Sterling family. One day I would return to the Sterlings and inherit the family empire. Since Vivian had made her choice, it was time for the Sinclair family to choose a different heir. Chapter 1. Vivian gripped my adopted brother Caleb's hand tightly, pulling him to stand before the crowd. Caleb gasped, trying to pull his hand back. "Vivian, we can't do this. Your marriage to my younger brother was arranged by Mr. Sinclair himself. You're the one I love. I won't marry anyone else." She resolutely locked her fingers with Caleb's and looked up at Arthur Sinclair, who was seated at the head table. "Grandfather, Caleb is the one I've always loved. I will only marry him." The guests' gazes were a mixture of sympathy and derision. Everyone in our circle knew that Vivian and I had grown up together, that I was the patriarch's hand-picked grandson-in-law. But now, in front of everyone, Vivian had just deeply humiliated me. Her tone was non-negotiable. "Even though Sincere and I grew up together, I've only ever seen him as a younger brother. I have no other feelings for him. Caleb and I are in love and have been together for a long time. In my heart, my husband can only be Caleb. No other man will do." The expressions on Robert and Beatrice Sinclair's faces changed instantly, and they nervously glanced at the patriarch. Vivian, with her arm linked through Caleb's, looked over at me, her eyes filled with a certain mockery. "Sincere, you should know I don't have romantic feelings for you. Surely you don't want to force a woman who doesn't love you into a miserable marriage for the rest of your life, do you? Besides, Caleb and I are already together. You can't just use the fact that grandfather likes you to get in the middle and try to break us up, can you?" I glanced at the two of them, then bowed to Arthur Sinclair. "Mr. Sinclair, since they are so in love, how could I be the one to break them up? Let's just grant them their wish. I wish Miss Sinclair and my brother a lifetime of happiness together." Hearing my words, a flash of displeasure crossed Vivian's face while Caleb cautiously took her arm. "Vivian, your marriage to your brother was arranged by your grandfather. Will he be upset about this?" Vivian patted the back of his hand reassuringly and cooed, "Of course not. Grandfather adores me. Why would he get angry with me over an outsider? Besides, you're the true son of the Donovan family, the heir. This was supposed to be a union between our two families. Why should we care about him, an outsider? Only my father and Arthur Sinclair knew my true identity. My mother is the heiress of the reclusive Sterling family. My parents' marriage was a business alliance, and since I would one day inherit the Sterling fortune, I took my mother's surname. More importantly, did she really think Caleb was my father's biological son?" Arthur Sinclair frowned at Vivian's words. "Vivian, don't be ridiculous. Are you certain you want to marry Mr. Donovan?" Vivian decisively slipped the ring onto Caleb's finger, then had him place a reverent kiss on her forehead. "Grandfather, I've thought it through. I will marry no one but Caleb in this life." Arthur Sinclair looked at Vivian with disappointment. If it were merely a matter of changing the groom, he wouldn't have thought much of it. But she had deliberately chosen to put me in an impossible position in front of so many people today, which proved she was unreliable. "Fine. Have it your way." Chapter 2. With Arthur Sinclair's words, a collective sigh of relief went through the crowd. Many business tycoons had been invited to witness the union, and everyone was eager to see how the drama would resolve. Amidst the whispers, Vivien took Caleb's hand and faced the guests. "Thank you all for coming today to celebrate my engagement to Mr. Caleb Donovan." The guests' faces were a mixture of expressions, shocked that the Sinclair and Donovan families would pull a stunt like swapping the groom on the spot. My father, Julian Donovan, hadn't expected this either. His face darkened instantly. My own expression wasn't much better, but I forced myself to stand tall, raising my glass and presenting a generous gift amidst the murmurs. Miss Sinclair actually switched fiancés right on the spot. She didn't give Sincere any face at all. Didn't old Mr. Sinclair insist on Sincere being his grandson-in-law? Why did he agree to the change? Switching fiancés at the engagement party, that's quite the scandal. I wonder what he did to make Miss Sinclair resort to such a drastic move. The guests' gossip wasn't quiet. My father shot Caleb a glare and spoke to Vivien without much courtesy. "How much gossip do you think your brother will have to endure because of what you've done? And you," he said, turning to Caleb, "you're not a child anymore. You act without thinking of the consequences. Are you trying to embarrass me?" Chastened by my father, Caleb timidly tried to take the ring off and give it to me. Arthur Sinclair waved his hand, stopping Caleb. He patted my head guiltily and said in a deep voice, "Sincere, my boy, don't worry. I'll make this right. If you're willing, there are several other fine young women in the Sinclair family." Vivian's parents, Robert and Beatrice, heard this but simply assumed the old man was trying to comfort me and paid it no mind. What they didn't expect was for me to point to a corner where the Sinclair family's illegitimate daughter was watching the drama unfold. Actually, the one I've always liked is Victoria Sinclair. "I hope you can grant us your blessing, grandfather." All eyes fell on Victoria, darting back and forth between her and me. Victoria was the illegitimate daughter of Arthur's late eldest son. Since her father's death, she was not well liked in the family and had a difficult time. But since she was still a Sinclair, and the patriarch didn't want people gossiping about the family mistreating a child, he had taken her in to raise her himself. My father looked at me, stunned. He leaned in and whispered, "Sincere, I know you're upset, but she's an illegitimate child. The Sinclairs don't value her at all." I nonchalantly swirled the wine in my glass and raised it in a toast towards Victoria. "It's not like she chose to be born illegitimate. I think she's quite remarkable. I'm willing to give it a try with her." Victoria's gaze met mine, her attitude casual. "Since Mr. Sterling is so fond of me, then let's give it a try." The looks from the crowd grew even more meaningful. News of the Sinclair family's on the spot switch spread through our social circle like wildfire. Just as the party ended, I received a text from my mother. In a private room, my mother, Eleanora Sterling, pulled me into a hug, her eyes shooting daggers at my father. "Julian Donovan, you dare let my son suffer such a huge humiliation? I see you're tired of running your company." I squeezed my mother's hand, steering the conversation back to the matter at hand. "Mr. Sinclair has arranged a new match for me. Her name is Victoria Sinclair. I quite like her." My father wiped the sweat from his brow and sighed. "She's just an illegitimate child and nobody in the Sinclair family. Why would you choose her?" Seeing their confused expressions, I spoke slowly. "The marriage alliance was set by Arthur Sinclair and my maternal grandfather. I have to marry a Sinclair girl. Victoria may be illegitimate, but she's the most capable of the younger Sinclair generation. She's also the smartest and most composed. From a business perspective, she is the perfect partner." Chapter 3. Besides, as an illegitimate daughter, marrying me means the Sterling family becomes her foundation in the Sinclair household. She would never betray me. Now Caleb Donovan was the man everyone was fawning over, with countless people lining up to get acquainted with him. After all, a powerful union between the Sinclair and Donovan families meant that anyone who could secure a partnership with them was guaranteed to climb to the next level in their industry. I had no time for such things, focusing instead on completing the tasks my mother had given me abroad. One day, it was Arthur Sinclair's birthday. Caleb specifically sent me an invitation and called several times, so I had no choice but to go. The moment I stepped through the Sinclair family's doors, all eyes were on me. I felt no embarrassment, smiling as I handed my gift to the Sinclair's butler. "What's Sincere Sterling doing here? Didn't they switch the fiancé? You haven't heard?" When Miss Sinclair insisted on the change, he chose the family's illegitimate daughter out of spite. He'd even marry an illegitimate child just to get into the Sinclair family. Mr. Sterling is certainly willing to do whatever it takes. As the crowd murmured, Vivien appeared, flamboyantly on Caleb's arm. Unlike her usual low-key, gentle style, today she wore a haute couture gown, adorned with several sets of intricate and luxurious jewelry. It made her look opulent but a bit tacky. As for Caleb, his suit alone was worth a fortune, and the watch on his wrist was worth as much as a mansion. When he saw me, he came over and tried to sling his arm around my shoulder familiarly. "Brother, it's wonderful that we can both be sons-in-law to the Sinclair family. For the sake of our brotherhood, I'll be sure to have Vivien promote your wife a little." I almost laughed out loud. Even now, he thought what I cared about was marrying a Sinclair, any Sinclair. Vivien thought the same. In her eyes, I would stop at nothing to marry her, and she looked at me as if I were some filthy thing. I couldn't be bothered with these two. I turned to leave, but then I saw a jade pendant of exceptional quality around Caleb's neck. It was a Sinclair family heirloom, always kept by Arthur Sinclair. I never expected to see it on Caleb. The Sinclair heir hadn't even been chosen yet. How did this pendant end up with Caleb? I pointed to the pendant around his neck, my eyes probing. "Where did you get that?" For a moment, Vivien looked guilty, while Caleb stroked the pendant, a wronged expression on his face. "Brother, this was supposed to be yours, but I'm the one marrying Vivien now, so naturally the pendant is mine." Vivien nodded, self-righteous. In her mind, she was already the designated heir, so what was the harm in letting her beloved wear the heirloom a little early? "This is my family's heirloom. I can let whoever I want wear it. What does it have to do with you?" She then looked me up and down and took a step back in disgust. "Don't even think about using this as an excuse to pester me. I will never like you. My heart belongs only to Caleb." Vivien's voice was not quiet, and several pairs of eyes landed on me. Sincere Sterling always seemed so aloof. I can't believe he tried to steal his own brother's fiancée just to climb the social ladder. Those two are clearly in love. Why is he still trying to harass her? Caleb blushed and gently tugged on Vivien's arm. "Don't be so harsh on my brother. Once he marries Victoria, we'll all be family. You should help them out then." Vivien glanced at me, then tilted her head up adoringly and pinched Caleb's cheek. "All right, for your sake, I'll let it go. But if you have any improper thoughts about me, don't blame me for being merciless." Just as the two were lost in their tender moment, a voice cut in from behind them. "Why would my husband have any improper thoughts about you? Vivien, that's a very rude way to speak to your future brother-in-law." Chapter 4. Victoria Sinclair entered, supporting Arthur Sinclair. A smile played on her lips, but her eyes held a hint of challenge as she looked at Vivien. Arthur's gaze fell on the jade pendant around Caleb's neck, and his expression darkened. "Who told you to wear that? Take it off." Arthur possessed an imposing presence without being angry. Caleb flinched, startled, and hastily removed the pendant. Vivien muttered, disgruntled, "Grandfather, I'm the one who let Caleb wear it. That pendant will be mine sooner or later anyway, so what's the big deal if he wears it for a bit?" Arthur said nothing, merely giving her a cold look before leading Victoria to her seat at the head of the room. He cleared his throat, addressing the guests at his birthday celebration. "Besides celebrating an old man's birthday, I have another piece of happy news to announce today. This is my granddaughter, Victoria Sinclair. In a few days, she and Sincere Sterling will be officially engaged. I hope you will all join us for a drink then." At this, the crowd's eyes widened, their gazes sweeping back and forth between me and Victoria. Vivien froze on the spot, staring at us in disbelief. "Grandfather, what are you talking about? Why is Sincere getting engaged to Victoria? Victoria is just an illegitimate child. She's—" Arthur cut her off sharply. Victoria is my granddaughter, too. She is a Sinclair. After the first engagement party, I had privately arranged to meet with Victoria. In the private room, she had looked at me with a knowing expression, a playful smile on her lips. I'm just an illegitimate child. There are so many other outstanding girls in the Sinclair family. Why choose me? I pushed a file across the table to her. Because you need me, and I need you. A partnership between us is the optimal solution. She only glanced at the file, not picking it up. What kind of partnership could we possibly have? I calmly slid the file closer to her. To be frank, I've done my research on you. You are an incredibly capable person, which is why I want to work with you. Besides, if you had no ambitions for the Sinclair family, why would you be making so many moves behind the scenes? Her eyes grew wary, but I paid it no mind. I leaned forward, my gaze locked on her wild, ambitious eyes. Aren't you curious why Arthur Sinclair said that only the person who marries me can inherit the Sinclair fortune? She stared at me for a long time. Just when I thought she was about to refuse, Victoria extended her hand. A pleasure doing business with you, my fiancée. Just as I expected, after I chose Victoria, Arthur Sinclair began to pay more attention to this granddaughter. Victoria had been brought back into the family quietly, her existence never publicly announced. Arthur must have done his own investigation into her, which is why he chose his birthday party to announce our engagement and simultaneously introduce Victoria to society. Robert and Beatrice Sinclair were completely blindsided by this turn of events, stunned into silence for a long time. After all, for the patriarch to announce my engagement to Victoria at this moment was a clear signal to the world that he intended to support her. In their eyes, I was just a burden from my father's first marriage, a dead weight who even carried his ex-wife's name. After I graduated, my father didn't arrange a position for me in the family company, instead letting me drift around, busy with who knows what. To them, this was a clear sign. I was not going to inherit the Donovan business. That's why they had silently accepted the swap. It was obvious which was more beneficial to them, a do-nothing heir or the one who would inherit the Donovan fortune. When Robert Sinclair finally recovered from the shock, his hands were trembling as he clutched his chest, taking several deep breaths. The birthday guests swarmed around Victoria, toasting her. Vivien, who had been so triumphant just moments before, was now pushed to the fringes of the crowd. She seemed to have snapped, glaring at me and demanding, "You've only met Victoria a few times. Are you really going to marry her just to spite me?" Before I could say a word, Victoria stepped to my side, looking down at Vivien. Victoria was not only a head taller than her, but her presence completely overwhelmed her. "Did you not understand? Sincere likes me. Why on earth would you think he likes you?" I stepped forward, taking Victoria's arm. I looked at Vivien with a hint of exasperation, as if looking at a petulant child. "I've already told you the person I like is Victoria. In my eyes, she is better than you in every single way. Please stop flattering yourself." Chapter 5. She didn't believe I was in love with Victoria. Her eyes were a complex mix of emotions as she stared at me, reaching out to take my hand. "Sincere, I regret it. If you're willing, I'll go to grandfather right now and tell him you're the one I want to marry." Beside her, Caleb's face went deathly pale at her words. He reached out to tug on her dress, but was violently shaken off. I dodged her touch, my gaze now completely devoid of any emotion. "I'm not willing." The guests stared in astonishment at the scene unfolding. "Is Miss Sinclair trying to marry Sincere Sterling again?" Well, they were childhood sweethearts. There must be feelings there. Maybe that Caleb fellow was just a fling. Exactly, see? The moment she heard Sincere was marrying someone else, she couldn't stand it. Caleb clenched his fists, all the color draining from his face. His eyes reddened as he pitifully pulled at Vivien. "Vivien, didn't you say you would marry me? Didn't you say you only loved me?" Only then did Vivien remember her current fiancé standing beside her. She looked at him with a conflicted expression. Before she could sort out her feelings, an incensed Arthur Sinclair strode over and kicked her hard. "What do you think you're doing? Is marriage a game to you? What do you take these two young men for? Do you think you're picking fruit at the market, swapping and choosing as you please? Who on earth raised you to be like this? You are an absolute disgrace to the Sinclair name." Vivien looked pleadingly at her parents. "Dad, Mom, please talk to Grandfather. Didn't you want Sincere to marry me too? Sincere only agreed to marry that bastard out of spite. Once he cools down, he'll regret it." Arthur's face turned black. He had just endorsed Victoria, and now Vivien was making a scene, turning the entire family into a laughingstock. What kind of drama is this Sinclair family putting on? So who is engaged to whom? Are they going to switch again in a few days? Sensing his father's fury, Robert Sinclair slapped Vivien on the back of the head. "If you say one more ridiculous thing, I'll break your legs now. Apologize to your cousin and Sincere this instant." Even Vivien, as foolish as she was, recognized the mocking stares of the crowd. Under the intense glares of her father and grandfather, she unwillingly apologized to me. "I drank too much and was talking nonsense. Sincere, please don't take it to heart." I accepted her apology with a smile, my eyes landing on Caleb, who was grinding his teeth behind her. "You should probably go comfort your fiancé. After that scene, I'm sure he's not feeling too great." At my reminder, all eyes turned back to Caleb. Although he enjoyed being the center of attention, this was not the kind of spotlight he wanted. Caleb shot me a vicious glare, then looked mournfully at Vivien, stomped his foot, and ran out the door. After the birthday party, Vivien called me several times, but I didn't answer. The date for my engagement to Victoria was set, next Thursday. Although the timeline was tight for the Sterling family, it was not an issue. My mother also planned to announce my status as the Sterling heir on my engagement day. With a Sinclair engagement, Vivien naturally had to be present. I was in the dressing room, arranging the suit I was about to wear. Just as I was about to change, a staff member rushed in, telling me that Victoria needed to see me about something, and that I should go to her. When I arrived at the location he mentioned, the door was suddenly shut and locked from the outside. A hand clamped a handkerchief tightly over my mouth and nose. The drug took effect quickly. My body went limp and weak. When I was thrown onto a bed, I saw that my captor was Vivien. She gently caressed my cheek, her eyes glittering with a mix of obsession and madness. "When Victoria sees what we've done, there's no way she'll marry you. You'll have no choice but to marry me." I was furious. I couldn't believe Vivien would dare to do something like this. "Are you insane? Pulling a stunt like this will only bring shame to both our families." She bit her lip, her fingers slowly unbuttoning my shirt. "Why were you so quick to marry someone else without a second thought? I'm telling you, you can only marry me." Her shamelessness made me laugh in disgust. I tried to slap her, but the drug had sapped my strength, and my hand only brushed weakly against her face. "You were the one who chose to marry someone else at the engagement party. And now you're blaming me." She stared at me with a dark intensity, leaning down as if to kiss me. "I regret it. I realize now that the person I've always loved is you. Caleb was just a momentary infatuation." Just as my belt was being undone, the door was thrown open with a bang. Victoria grabbed Vivien by the hair and threw her violently to the floor. Victoria and I exchanged a look. She splashed some water on my face and helped me into another room. I was completely drained and couldn't possibly go down for the ceremony, so I called over the assistant my mother had left with me and whispered some instructions in his ear. Chapter 6. Before long, I heard a commotion in the hallway, the sound of a woman crying and screaming, mixed with a man's angry shouts and curses. Victoria returned, and seeing that I had regained some strength, she leaned against the doorframe, observing me with interest. "You had someone drug her?" I smiled, managing to prop myself up. "Just returning the favor." Victoria helped me out of the room. The hallway was a scene of chaos. Vivien was crying and thrashing about while Caleb, yanking at his tie in frustration, tried to console her. A scantily clad man stood nearby, watching the scene with cold detachment. Soon, Robert and Beatrice Sinclair arrived. It was obvious to anyone what had happened in the room. Victoria and I stood a short distance away. Vivien immediately pointed at us and screamed. It was them. They set me up. I was supposed to be with the words almost slipped out, but she stopped herself, remembering that she had been the one to make the first move against me. If this got out, Arthur would never forgive her. "How could you do this to me?" Caleb wailed, turning the attention on himself. "You said you only loved me, and now you're cheating on me like this." Caleb's cries attracted many of the guests who had come for the engagement party. The previous incidents had already destroyed Vivian's reputation. A scandal like this would be the talk of the town for months. Seeing all the stares, Vivien became dizzy with anger. She took it out on Caleb, slapping him across the face. "What are you crying about? Haven't you embarrassed us enough?" With such a spectacle to watch, no one noticed that the engagement ceremony had been delayed by 20 minutes. Victoria and I appeared hand in hand, ignoring Vivian's murderous glare, and stood on the stage, smiling sweetly. My mother emerged from backstage with the Sterling family's butler and several assistants. The guests' eyes widened in disbelief. While they didn't know my mother, they certainly recognized the senior aides of the Sterling family. As several people eagerly prepared to approach her, my mother took the microphone and announced my identity as the heir to the Sterling family. Down below, Vivien and Caleb stood as if their souls had left their bodies, their mouths agape, unable to react. Beside them, Robert and Beatrice's faces turned red, then white, as they gasped for air like fish out of water. They had never imagined that I was the Sterling heir. In that moment, they finally understood what Arthur Sinclair had meant when he said that only the person who married me could inherit the Sinclair family. After that engagement party, Caleb and Vivien became social pariahs. The very same people who had been fawning over them were now avoiding them like the plague. Vivien had never experienced such a fall from grace. She tried to prove she was better than Victoria through her career, but her skills were no match for Victoria's. She could handle simple business deals, but when she insisted on investing in fields she knew nothing about, she was played for a sucker and lost a huge amount of money. Instead of reflecting on her mistakes, she convinced herself that Victoria had set her up and began to recklessly target her. After a series of failures, Arthur Sinclair finally had enough. He summoned her home, gave her a severe scolding, and stripped her of all real power, leaving her as a mere shareholder with nothing to do. Meanwhile, Victoria and I were working together. She helped me expand our market overseas, and I helped her secure her position back home. I had to admit, Victoria was a force to be reckoned with in business. In just 6 months, she had met the entire year's targets. Arthur Sinclair also acknowledged her abilities, starting to entrust her with key internal projects and even giving her a senior position at the head office to gain more experience. Everyone knew that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, Victoria Sinclair would be the next head of the Sinclair family. While Victoria's star was rising, Vivian's world was bleak. Since being stripped of her power, she had nothing to do all day and began to indulge in a life of pleasure, eventually surrounding herself with a string of male models. Caleb, furious about Vivian's philandering, began to argue with her constantly, losing all of his former gentle demeanor. After catching her in bed with another man, Caleb completely broke down. He rushed in, screaming and fighting with her, but in the scuffle, he accidentally pushed her down the stairs. Vivien was fine, but she miscarried the child she was carrying. The two of them were quiet for a while, until one of Vivian's young male models showed up at their door. The matter was ultimately brought before Arthur Sinclair, who was so enraged he broke 3 canes on her, landing Vivien in the hospital for a full month, despite Vivian's incompetence. Her father, Robert, was a man of some means. I knew that getting Victoria to inherit the family fortune would not be that simple. But while Robert was a formidable opponent, he had a daughter who was a liability, and that made things easier. Vivien had caused so many unbelievable scandals that as soon as she was discharged from the hospital, her father forced her to marry Caleb. Robert was bidding on a major project and needed the wedding to salvage what little face he had left. Vivien seemed to realize the gravity of the situation and obediently went through with the ceremony. As Victoria's fame grew, Vivien, the former golden girl of the Sinclair family, was inevitably brought up for comparison. Chapter 7. To praise Victoria, people tore Vivien down, and every word reached Vivian's ears. I heard she smashed countless things at home, finally vowing through gritted teeth to make Victoria pay. During one business collaboration, the project Victoria was in charge of was investigated for problems, including allegations of cutting corners, using substandard materials, and leaking company assets. Just as Vivien thought she could press her advantage, the authorities took away the few remaining people who worked for her. She had now completely lost all her influence in the company. She returned home utterly dejected, only to hear Caleb chattering away, trying to take credit. "Honey, did something happen with Victoria's project?" Vivien looked at Caleb strangely. "How did you know?" Caleb puffed out his chest proudly. "I had someone leak her documents, and that construction project of hers, I had someone switch out the materials, and also—" Before Caleb could finish, a wave of fury and nausea washed over Vivien. She nearly coughed up blood. She knew very well that if these things came out, it wouldn't just be Victoria who suffered, but the entire Sinclair family. When Arthur Sinclair found out Caleb was behind it, he would surely not let her off the hook either. Her gaze towards Caleb turned vicious. Without a word, she dragged him into the car and floored it to the old Sinclair estate. Vivien knelt before Arthur Sinclair, tearfully confessing Caleb's foolish actions. Only then did Caleb realize the magnitude of his mistake. He wept and clung to Vivian's leg, begging for her forgiveness. "I was just trying to help you. I saw how unhappy you were all the time, so I wanted to do something. I never thought it would turn out like this." The two of them gave Arthur a splitting headache. He slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, the priority right now is to fix this mess." He looked deeply at Vivien and sighed. "Vivien, you have disappointed me more than I can say." Victoria and I were also summoned. In the study of the Sinclair estate, Arthur looked grimly at Caleb and explained the situation. My father, Julian, was so angry at Caleb he almost fainted. He pointed a trembling finger at him. "How could you do something so foolish? Why must you always compete with your brother? Can't you just live your life in peace?" Caleb, having already cried his eyes out, had eyes swollen like peaches. He wiped his tears and yelled defiantly at our father. "We are both your sons. Why does he get the best of everything? You even let him handle the family business while I'm left with nothing." My father was even more incensed by the accusation. "Didn't I always get you a copy of everything I bought for Sincere? Some of those things were gifts from Sincere's mother. You can't expect her to get you one too, can you?" My father took a breath, then pointed at Caleb's nose. "You almost failed to graduate high school. I had to pay a fortune to send you abroad just to get a fancy degree. Do you really think you know how to run a company? If I let you manage the company, it would be bankrupt in a month. You tell me why I don't give you the business to run." Caleb was speechless, but then, as if remembering something else, he started crying again. "Then why did you only give me 5% of the shares while Sincere got the other 35%? Is this how you honor my mother's memory? She died in childbirth for you, and this is how you treat me?" My father rubbed his temples wearily, his eyes full of disappointment. "Of Sincere's shares, only 5% came from me. The company's largest shareholder is Sincere's mother. I only own 12% of the shares myself. I kept 2%. And the remaining 10% was split evenly between you and Sincere. And I have to tell you the truth. You are not my biological son. You are a child I found and adopted. If you don't believe me, we can check the adoption records. I have done more than enough for you. I never thought you would turn out like this." Caleb was stunned into silence, unable to process that he wasn't his father's biological son. Vivien, who had hoped to use the Donovan family to regain some footing, was now faced with this new reality. In the ensuing silence, it was Victoria who first proposed a solution. She acted with incredible speed, resolving everything before the scandal could explode in the media. By the time the story hit the news, the company had already issued a statement, confirming that an internal investigation had been completed and the relevant personnel had been handed over to the authorities. Once the dust settled, Arthur Sinclair held a press conference and officially confirmed Victoria as the heir to the Sinclair family. Vivian's branch of the family was completely marginalized. Though they still held some shares, their power was a shadow of its former self. They blamed everything on Caleb, and their household descended into a state of utter chaos, filled with constant bitter arguments. My wedding to Victoria was an unprecedentedly grand affair. We stood before the crowd, smiled at each other, and mouthed the same words. "A pleasure doing business with you." The end.